Okay, this video will help guide you through Project 9. And Project 9 is very similar to Project 1, except that now you've had, some weeks in the course and maybe you've had some better ideas what gear you might need or what you might want to do with this equipment. And again, you're under no obligation to buy anything. This is all hypothetical at this point, just to get you thinking about what gear you might need one day. This is actually a Miller beer commercial, but I included it because they talk about the home studio.
I am rich. With fans clamoring for our next hit album, we return to our extravagant private studio, where we turn gold into platinum. Yes, I am rich. That's why I drink the champagne of beers.
These guys are retro. They're still using tape. One thing you may not ever have to buy when you're doing a home studio is any outboard processing because you'll be using plugins. Here's a video about plugins. This is from the ebook. Signal processing that was typically done using either the circuitry that was part of the mixing console or standalone outboard signal processors is now usually done with plugins. Plugins are software that can be included as part of the digital audio workstation package or can be developed by a third party. They use the signal processing power of the host computer or the processing found on the added sound cards or proprietary workstation cards. Plugins typically emulate the original hardware they're designed to replace and have three advantages over their hardware counterparts. First is cost. The plugin versions are almost always cheaper than the hardware processors they emulate, and a single plugin can be instantiated on as many tracks as desired, assuming the RAM is available. Second, plugins are totally automatable. Not only is every plugin parameter recalled when the session is opened, but they can be dynamically automated as well. And third, most plugins have graphic displays that visually aid the user in fine-tuning the plugin settings. There are many advantages of using plugins over the actual hardware. Other than cost, which is probably the biggest, the idea that your program will remember exactly what you did. So if you need to tweak a mix, which happens actually quite a lot, or you have to go back and make some other revision for whatever reason, everything is totally recalled. You open your session and it's like a Word document, everything is there. You don't have to spend time repatching things and recalibrating everything. It's all right there. I haven't really talked much about soundproofing, but I will mention that when we built our studio, for every dollar we spent on equipment, we spent that much money exactly on soundproofing to float the floors and the walls and the ceilings, to isolate the rooms so that no vibration or no air movement could pollute the sound. You probably won't have to do that. This is an episode again from the ebook about soundproofing. The term soundproofing is a bit misleading since very few places on Earth are totally devoid of sound. However, soundproofing can help attenuate unwanted sound, which is very helpful when trying to record audio. Sound propagates through liquid media like air and water, and also through solid media like steel and concrete. Therefore, in order to make a space more soundproof, the transmission of sound both through air and through hard mechanical connections must be addressed. Typically, the walls are multi-layered to prevent any airflow, and doors have rubber strips that seal the openings when the doors are closed. Usually, the more daunting issue is isolating the space mechanically from the surroundings. Interior walls and ceilings are often connected to the structure with spring systems, and the floors are supported by compression pads that all dampen vibrations. Even though in most cases rooms that are constructed like this are not 100% soundproof, they attenuate the sound more than enough so that outside noise is not a factor inside the room or vice versa. Another thing you may not have to have, even if you're doing bands, you may not have to actually spend a lot of money on amplifiers. First of all, bands probably have their own amplifiers, but one thing you might try, and I use this all the time, is amp modeling. And it's a way to kind of simulate an amp using a direct insertion box. You just plug the guitar directly into the computer, not making any noise. That's one of the big advantages, so you don't have to worry about any noise in the actual room getting into the other mics. But then the other big advantage is that later on you can go back and change the sound if you want, because you're not actually recording the sound of the amp, you're recording just the sound of the guitar. And here's an episode from the ebook about amp modeling. Like other digital signal processing, amp modeling uses the power of the computer to run programs that emulate an analog process. In this case, the DSP is used to produce the sound of a specific guitar amp. The first step in creating the software program is to find the actual amplifiers that are to be modeled. They need to be totally functional and a good representation of those particular amps. signal is run through the amplifiers, and the output is measured. This process is repeated using multiple settings with all of the various parameter knobs on each of the amps. Once all of the data has been collected, the software engineers write a program so that the DSP will produce an emulation of the sound of each of those amplifiers that also changes appropriately as the various knobs are adjusted by the user. The software engineers also develop a graphic user interface that has the look and feel of the actual amplifier that was modeled. Players can simply use a DI, direct insertion box, for their guitar and let the plugin create the sound of the desired amp. The sound of the amp can then be adjusted at any time during the recording, even during the final mix. When I first started working with workstations, a concept that was really baffling to me was offline mixing. The idea that you could mix without actually hearing what you were doing. Because in the past, the way we mix things, we'd roll the tape and we'd sit back and move the faders and adjust it in real time to match what we wanted to hear. But the idea now with workstations is that you can actually mix much faster without actually listening in real time. You can move the volume lines, you can keyframe and put nodes in, you can move the pan around, you can do the same thing with plugins. One of the biggest advantages of offline mixing is that it's just much faster than mixing in real time. After electrical recording was introduced by Western Electric in 1925, it was possible to make a recording using multiple microphones and adjusting those levels in real time using a mixing console. After multi-track recorders were introduced in the 1950s, the session could be recorded to tape and then remixed at a later time. This remix was done by adjusting the levels of the console as the tape was played. Generally, the mixing engineer would make several passes to practice the mix and then make notes or marks, usually on a piece of tape next to each fader, that would indicate the proper fader position for that particular part of the song. Then, the tape would be played, the faders and other knobs would be adjusted, and the process would be repeated as many times as necessary to achieve the desired result. When console automation with voltage-controlled faders was introduced around 1970, the mix engineer would play the tape and move the faders just as before. However, the automation system would now reproduce those fader moves on subsequent passes, allowing the mix to be continually refined. Digital audio workstations have this same capability, which can be helpful when using a DAW with a control surface that has multiple faders. However, one feature that's now possible with DAWs is offline mixing. Here, adjustments to volume, pan, aux sends, plugins, and other settings can be made with no sound playing. The mix engineer simply makes adjustments to a line that represents that particular mix parameter. By doing this, offline mixing can speed up the mix process, since the adjustments can be made instantly for files that might play for a long period of time. When I first started working in studios, we didn't have console automation. And when we finally got it, my reaction was, wow, that's kind of neat. I can actually listen to what I'm mixing. Because before, when you were mixing something, it was almost like you were listening to a director in an ear monitor. You know, it's like, okay, here comes the second verse, bring the vocal up, okay, take the guitar down, and you've got this dialogue going off in your head, and you're not really listening. But when you can automate the mix, do it, and then sit back and listen to it, it's like, yeah, that's good. And then it's very easy to make tweaks. And that's why mixing has gotten so much more refined with automation. We used to accept a mix if it was 90% right, even though there might have been one thing that we didn't like. But now there's no excuse for that. We can go back very easily and fix it. And the good news is any workstation you pick will have automation of some kind. So old school mixing shouldn't be an issue. Automated mixing actually began way back in 1939 with Bill Garrity and John Hawkins as they were developing the Fanasound system for Disney's Fantasia. However, it would be decades before automation was available on mixing consoles. Consoles with VCA, voltage-controlled amplifier faders, allowed mix engineers to set levels and refine the mix with every pass. Engineers could lock in the volume levels on many of the tracks, freeing them to focus on the nuances of one or more tracks, and create a mix with more precision than ever before. Unfortunately, on most of the early automated consoles, the automation was limited to only volume and mute. The mix engineer therefore needed to make detailed notes indicating how everything else, both onboard and outboard, was configured, in case the session needed to be redone in the future. As console automation improved, data was recorded for almost all functions, although many of these features still required some manual reset, and many of the consoles could not dynamically change these settings during the mix. With digital audio workstations, almost all mixing parameters can be dynamically automated. Once the automation is written, the session can be opened in the future with all the proper settings, as easily as opening a Word document. Something that I find is very useful, and in fact, even Chris Lord-Alge talks about this when he does his mixes. He'll do an A-B check. It's very easy when you're working for a long time to think, wow, this is really sounding good. But then you need to compare it to something else. I had this experience one time. I was working with a client and they just weren't liking the sound. And I just simply turned the volume up and they go, wow, that's great. What'd you do? But I didn't really do anything. So what you want to do is ideally, if you're working with an artist, you want to find some band that they like the sound of and then use that as kind of a benchmark. When you're mixing, then you kind of go back and forth and compare it against this other group that they like. Not that the song has to be the same or the sound has to be the same, but you want the proportions of the mix to be about that. Speakers and headphones all have slightly varied characteristics that can affect the sound reproduction. That is, some boost or attenuate certain frequencies more than others, and the type of dampening that some speakers exhibit can affect the amplitude envelope. Below 300 Hz, the room itself primarily affects the frequency response. So, when evaluating an audio signal in different locations or on different speakers or headphones, it's helpful to have a reference. This reference can be a well-recorded CD, LP, cassette, or digital file that's similar in style or genre to the material that you're recording or mixing. It's a plus if the reference material you're using has won a Grammy or has been a commercial success. The comparison of the sound characteristics, the volume, timbre, and spatial effects of the reference file to the audio that's being recorded or mixed produces a reality check. For example, it becomes obvious if there's too much of a particular instrument, if the voice-to-music mix is correct, if there's too much reverb or delay, etc. However, be aware that the reference file being used has very likely been mastered and has some additional compression. Mastering engineers prefer to have a bit more dynamic range in the files they receive. One solution would be to add more compression in the monitor chain as opposed to the program chain, or simply remove the program limiting during the final bounce. That way, the new material can be monitored with compression even though it isn't actually being compressed, so that it sounds more like the reference. This is kind of an interesting group. It's from a Swedish band called Wintergarten. And this guy built this machine out of wood. He actually built all the gears and everything and used Lego blocks and other things for some of the mechanisms. He's got like a bass guitar and some other things mounted on here. And he's got it so that every crank of the wheel is one beat. It's a cool video. Here's another video of a guy who's taken toys and junk and silverware and whatever and made an instrument out of it. He's used some looping in that, but it's kind of an interesting thing. He's got a tennis racket that he's made into a guitar. Another processor that I've used on literally every voiceover session I've ever recorded is a de-esser. You know how I'm always talking about adding more high-end to increase the presence, but sometimes you can kind of go a little too far with it. What a de-esser does is pull you back in those situations. It allows the dialogue to be bright, but if there are places where the dialogue actually gets too bright, it automatically pulls the high-end back a little bit for you. And this is the video from the ebook about de-essers. The sibilance range is from 2K to 10K, depending on the particular voice or signal. In order to eliminate issues caused when sibilant consonants, the S, Z, and SH are too loud, a device called a de-esser is often inserted in the signal chain. A de-esser is a dynamic device as opposed to a static equalizer. De-essers allow the high-frequency signals to pass unobstructed until a threshold is reached. High-frequency signals louder than that threshold are attenuated, in the same way a compressor limiter would act on the entire signal. There are three basic de-essing schemes: broadband, also known as sidechain, split band, and dynamic equalization. Broadband de-essers route the gain reduction control signal through a bandpass filter that's centered on the peak sibilance frequency. Therefore, the de-esser reduces the level of the entire signal when there's an excessive amount of sibilance present. Split band de-essers are similar to multiband limiters, where the signal is divided into several frequency ranges, and, in this case, only the high frequency range is attenuated. Dynamic equalizers use a control signal that's been bandpassed in the sibilance range like the broadband de-essers. This control signal is used to dynamically affect the gain on a voltage-controlled parametric equalizer that's set to attenuate the sibilance. Overuse of de-essers can cause strong sibilant sounds to appear as a lateral lisp. However, when used properly, de-essers can prevent high-frequency distortion, especially when the audio is to be exported to media that has almost no high-frequency headroom, like cassettes, vinyl, low-res digital signals, and AM radio. So I'm going to go to the project page, and then I'm going to download the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet is very similar to the spreadsheet from Project 1. In fact, if you have your spreadsheet from Project 1, you can kind of copy and paste from that. There are just a few more items on this one than on the Project 1 spreadsheet. In Part D, I ask you to sketch perhaps your layout there. You don't really have to do that. If you want to just take a picture with your cell phone and include that, that would be fine. Or if you want to make a crude sketch, it doesn't have to be an architectural drawing. And we talked about this in Project 1 for Part E, but do you intend to use your studio to record outside clients? And we talked about all the issues you have when you're doing outside clients. First of all, it's going to be more expensive. You're going to have to make your house look a little nicer. You're going to have more amenities. And you also may run into zoning issues because you're going to have traffic on the street and neighbors may complain. But a lot of times that's unavoidable. If that's really what you want to do, if you want to have a studio for bands, then that's fine. You can work around those issues. But just put yes or no for that one. And if your plan is to do a podcast where you're going to be interviewing somebody every week, they're going to come in, that's fine. What I'm talking about here is if you're going to do a home studio for bands and you're going to have 2 carloads or 3 carloads of people come in every week to do something, that's where it becomes more of an issue. Nobody's going to object if somebody comes in once a week to visit you. So in that case, if you were doing a podcast, no would be the answer. And Part F, this is the big issue. If you were opening it up to other people, what are you going to charge per hour or per project? Some people like to pay per project. Some people like to pay per hour. And then it gets dicey, like what if they're just really bad musicians and it takes me like 3 years to record this? I charged a project rate one time. This was a choir that I was recording at a church. And normally I would be there for the performance and the setup. So it would be like a couple hours. I was there for like 10 hours because they were trying to sing a cappella in this church in Norwood, just off Stewart Road. And there was heavy traffic and the traffic sounded like it was driving through the interior of the church. And we had to do take after take after take because there would be a bus or a motorcycle or whatever. So sometimes get into trouble charging per project, but some people would feel more comfortable paying per project because then they know how much money they have to allocate. When you charge by the hour, they don't know if it's going to take 2 hours or 10 hours. And that's something you kind of develop. At the studio, we generally charged per hour unless it was a creative project, in which case we'd had enough experience. We knew how long things were going to take and we would actually charge per project. Anyway, this is a video that I think will be helpful. This is from YouTube, but it's a guy who actually just started his own business. He didn't really know anything about engineering when he started, but he was a rapper, I guess, and wanted to do mixing. He learned on his own and he built his business up by giving away sessions free at first and then honing his craft and finally getting to the point where he could actually charge some real money to do it.
What up, homies and homettes? This is Jordan Criddle from mixedbyjordan.com. I am a recording and mixing audio engineer based outside of Kansas City, Kansas, and I wanted to make a video today discussing the steps that I've taken to start making money out of your home studio. Alright, so step 1 for me was once I identified what it is that I wanted to do with my life. So I've always known that I'm not the type that I can just sit in a cubicle until I'm 65 and then retire or, work hard working for someone else's dream. I want to work for myself. So once I identified what it is that I wanted to do, I'm kind of the type of person who becomes obsessed with stuff. So I would spend hours upon hours upon hours every single day, staying up extremely late at night, just learning the craft of engineering. So a huge part of learning it is practicing it, but also, as creative as audio engineering is, it's very technical as well. So, I remember I bought my first interface from a friend of mine, and, he texted me. We'd been texting back and forth. I was an artist. I actually used to record with this guy, and he texted me stating that he had a interface for sale, and I had no idea what an interface was. So I'm having that conversation with him, asking him, and he's explaining to me what an interface is. So there's a lot of, just tools that you use as a mixer that you need to, be aware of. So I spent, again, hours every single day just researching the crap out of engineering, whether it was Gear Sluts, YouTube, PureMix.net, Audio School Online. Yeah, just, any site that I'm sure that you guys have been on, I've spent plenty of hours on it. And I'm just the type to, research stuff until I just can't find anything else. So step 2 in this process is to practice the craft. So what I did, since I was an artist first, I know a lot of the local artists here around the Kansas City area. So I reached out to a few people that, I'm cool with, some friends, and offered them free studio time. What artist is going to turn down free studio time? So I would have them come through, and I would just record and mix their project. Wouldn't cost them anything. And they weren't expecting much. If you're getting something for free, you really can't expect much. And me, that was where I was able to just kind of cut my teeth on some records and start using compressors, start using EQs, start working on balance, depth, all of these different things that we need as an engineer. That's where I was able to practice those techniques and really own my skills. So step number 3 in this process is building clientele. So there's a few ways to go about doing that. Hopefully those first few artists that you were recording and mixing for free, you start to get better. They start to see value in the product that you're giving back to them. And, you're able to have that conversation with them like, hey, I'm looking to eventually make this a full-time thing. Obviously, I can't do that giving away free sessions. You guys seem to like the mixes that you're getting back from me. I'm now going to start charging you an hourly rate or project rate, however you want to do it. So hopefully those first few artists that you were letting come through for free, hopefully they, instantly turn into some clientele. Another thing that seems to work is just going out to shows, networking. Again, you may offer a free session this time to, someone who you don't know, they haven't worked with you before. Give them a free session, a couple hours or whatever, and let them see what you can do. But instead of treating them as I'm going to let you get a couple free sessions as I practice. At this point, you should be gaining some confidence in your skills. Offer them a free session, knock out a mix, and say, hey, this is what I have to offer, and this is how much I charge. Again, you just have to go into that conversation having confidence in yourself, even if obviously you're probably not at the level of some of your favorite engineers that you've studied. But, have that confidence that you're not just offering them crap, you're offering them value, and, set the price accordingly. All right, step number 4. This is what worked for me. So for me, music has always been something delicate. I never wanted music to be something that is this burden or this stressful thing like, man, I have to have, this person come through Friday because I have to be able to make my car payment. Like, I never wanted music to get that, to be that, So step number 4 for me, it was having a day job. Okay, so this allowed me to take the 2.5, 3 years to really work on my skills, not have to stress about making sure I have X amount of artists, X amount of sessions each week. I was able to take my time, not perfect my skills because I'm not perfect by any means, but really get to a point where, not only am I expressing, the value that I have to offer to artists, but it's gotten to a point now where my name is kind of spreading word of mouth. The artists are very satisfied, very happy with the mixes that they're getting back from me, and they're talking amongst each other about it. So, more and more artists are coming through, and that's just due to the hard work that I was able to put in. But I was able to put in that hard work because I didn't have to stress about it. I knew I had my 9 to 5. I knew I was getting a check, from that 9 to 5, and I didn't have to stress about, the music. So again, step 4 is having your day job, and, obviously with the goal of working towards building your craft up to a point where you can potentially leave that job, if that's your goal. And step number 5, the final step for me, this is something that I've just recently gone through, is raising your prices. So again, now this is how I pay my bills. I'm very confident in my abilities as an engineer, and buying gear isn't free. Buying plugins is not free. The space that your studio is in is not free. Plus, you've worked extremely hard to provide value to the artist. So, you may not be charging $1,000 per mix, but you do need to have confidence in yourself and charge a rate that you feel like you deserve. If the artist likes what you've been giving them, they will come back. I started off, the first person I started charging, I was charging them $10 an hour, and I wasn't even charging them for the mixing. That was just to record. I would let them go, and then I would knock out the mixes on my own. Obviously, that's not the case anymore, but I was kind of scared to start raising prices on people because I just felt like they wouldn't come back. But again, yeah, if you're giving the artist value, if they're letting people hear their songs, and people are like, whoa, man, that sounds great, blah, 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 they're going to come back. Not only are they going to come back, but they're going to tell people where they record, and you're going to get other artists coming to you, texting you, emailing you, whatever. So definitely, raise your prices as your skills increase, as you get new gear, as you get a new space or whatever. And whenever you add value to what you're offering, be confident in that and feel free to raise your prices. So those are the 5 steps that worked for me in running a successful home studio. Try them out. Hopefully they work for you as well.
And here's another video with some helpful information about the same subject.
Hey everyone, Graham here from the recordingrevolution.com, and today I kind of want to answer a question that I get all the time in email about how do I start making money from recording and mixing, if I want to do this as a side business or I want to go full-time one day. And then the related question is, how do I set my rates? How do I know how much to charge, and how do you start that process? So a lot of you are just doing this for fun. So this is just for your own music, to get quality recordings and mixes of your own music. You're the artist. I get that. I still do that. I want to release great music of my own and make it sound good. And then a lot of you are starting to wonder, hey, I don't like my job, or I'd like to make a career move, or when I get out of school, I like to do audio for a living, and I don't know how to transition the skills that I'm building into getting paid to do it. So I get this question all the time in email, and I would say check out the Simply Recording Podcast. It's simplyrecordingpodcast.com. Me and my buddy Joe Gilder addressed this a little bit on a podcast last fall. Search through it. It's called 3 Steps to Getting Your First Paid Gig. But I keep getting questions about it, and I was starting to write an article on the blog about it, and I kind of walk you through how I started to charge and my thoughts on all that stuff, and I just decided to just talk to you, to the camera. So there are kind of 3 stages of this process of someone who wants to start recording or mixing for a living. And so you might fall into one of those stages. So I just want to hit them really briefly today, sort of show you the arc of how I got into recording and mixing for a living and how a lot of my friends have done that. And you'll probably find yourself along that arc somewhere. And then hopefully that will give you some ideas about where you are and where you want to be and what it's going to take to get there. The specifics, it really depends because I don't know you, I don't know your skill level, I don't know your market. But this really, I think, will help. So number one, if you're just starting out, like you literally are trying to gain experience and to get good enough that you could charge, and we'll address the good enough thing in a minute, then you need to do a lot of work for free. Okay, this is just like any other industry. You need to just put yourself out there, beg people, ask people to record them, to mix them. You need to do your own music, of course. Record and mix a lot, right? Finish your own projects. Don't drag out your album or EP forever. Finish it and move on so that you can move on to another project. Then all your friends who are musicians, or if you go to clubs or bars or venues around town and you're starting to get to know bands and artists, get to know them, ask if they want some free recording or free mixing. Tell them that you are a budding producer, a budding mix engineer, a budding recording engineer, and you like to build up your portfolio and you like their music. So pick people whose music you like as well, because that's the whole point, is why work on music you don't like? You're going to do a better job if you're working on music you do like. So especially if it's free, go up to people that you think are better than you, that wouldn't hire you, that are out of your league, and say, hey, I'm trying to build my portfolio. I would love to work with you guys for a song or an EP or 3 songs or whatever. Just feel them out. A lot of people are going to love some free studio time if you're offering. If they don't know if you're any good, if you do it for free and it's just a couple of songs, they've got nothing to lose. So you might as well ask them and get some experience. So when I was in high school, I was dabbling with this for fun on the side. Got to college and was going to school for audio, but the first couple of years I'm taking all my other general electives of non-audio related stuff, and I just found every person in the music department that was a singer, that had recitals, that was a songwriter, that had a band, and I was recording everyone. I mean, I had a little inbox, a 2-channel USB interface, and I just showed up and said, hey, I'll record, and then I was mixing, and I did as much as I could for free just to gain experience. You make a lot of bad recordings, you make a lot of bad mixes, but they're getting what they paid for, which is nothing. So you've got nothing to lose, you don't have to worry about your credibility, you need to just do a large body of work to kind of get all the junk out and then to learn from your mistakes and stuff about how to actually make great recordings. So you might be at that stage. Just do a lot more work for free, not your own work. Start to branch out and start destroying your fear. If you ever want to do this for a living, you got to destroy that fear that you have of what people will think of you. And the best way to do that is to start asking people to let you record and mix them for free. Okay? You have to do some of that, because then what that's going to give you is a portfolio of, here are 5 to 10 songs that I've recorded or mixed from various artists, showing the genre or genres I like to work in. And then you can build a simple website or a SoundCloud page or something with your samples, so that when you want to start charging, you have credibility. You can say, well, this is what you'll get, basically. This is what I can do. And people can listen and decide if they like you or not. That's how you start a portfolio. Work for free, okay? Now, some of you are already working for free, and you are doing everything for free. And it's time to stop doing stuff for free. It's time to start charging something, because this is the other trap, and this is the only problem with doing work for free for other people, is that you're afraid to then start charging. You're afraid of what people are going to think of you. You're afraid that you're not worth it. You're afraid that you're not good enough, and you don't even know what to start charging. So you just keep doing your band's work for free, your friends' work for free, and they said, hey, we got another album, will you do it for free again? The big answer for you is no. You got to say no more free, because if you already have a portfolio on your website, you can say, check out these songs, and they sound good, and you've been able to get work, and your free clients like what you're doing, it's time to start charging. You're not going to be, your favorite mixer or producer in terms of quality yet, but that doesn't mean you don't charge, okay? So that's the misnomer, is we wait and wait and wait until we're good enough the level that we've set personally, like I have to be as good as Dave Pensato, who was on the show recently. I got to be as good as him before I can start charging. Well, that'll take you a lifetime. You maybe will never be as good as Dave Pensato. You might be better than him, and he would hope that you would be, because he's that kind of guy. But why wait 30 or 40 years to hopefully be as good as he is just to find out that you're not that good, and all the while you could have been charging? Okay, you don't have to be the best to make a living at this. Little newsflash for you, in case you didn't know, I am not the best recording and mixing engineer on the planet, okay? There are guys that are way better than me, and I'm fully aware of that. But that has never stopped me from trying to make a living doing this, because I feel like I have something to offer, and I'm way better now than what I was when I first started doing paid work. Okay, so I started in college, right? I was doing free work, but then I realized I need to start charging. I've done, 10, 20, 30, 40 songs, maybe more. And in my mind, I was ready to start charging. Now, how much did I charge? Not much. Okay, so it doesn't really matter how much you charge for this next stage. Some of you guys need to do it for free. If you've done the free thing, the next stage is the people that need to start charging, and that alone is challenging for people. So what I say is, whatever you think a going rate is hourly for a local studio, you're not going to be that local studio because you don't have the space, probably. That's part of their hourly rate, is the physical space they're in, maybe the gear they have, and then the years of experience they have. That's all probably wrapped into their rate. And you don't have that. You probably are just in your home. You probably have a lot less gear, and they probably have a lot less experience. But that's okay. So figure out what they're charging an hourly, and then charge less than that, so you're a little bit more affordable, which makes sense. But then here's the key: in my mind, don't charge by the hour. Okay, don't charge people by the hour. Know what your hourly rate is, but charge by the project, because this takes all the risk off of your artist or your client and puts it on you, which makes people more apt to work with you. And then it also puts the onus on you to actually work fast and work with quality. And that's kind of a hack to get you to be better. So what I would do is I would say, like, if you decided my hourly rate is $15 an hour or $20 an hour US or whatever it would be, you say, that's what I feel like I'm worth, and you're guessing. I mean, you really are guessing. But you know that you're doing something that is of worth, and you are going to spend time on it, and you have some equipment, so there is some cost of business. If it takes you 5 hours to mix a song and your hourly rate is $20 an hour in your mind, then do the math. That's $100 to mix a song. And so what you present to somebody is, I charge $100 to mix a song, and what that looks like is you get, full multi-track mix, and you're going to get the wave and the MP3, and we have some revisions. Whatever it is, you come up with that per song price so that the artist can just say, oh, okay, I can afford to do 3 songs. And then they know that no matter how long you take, it's going to be the same price. That's the next stage you want to get into. The price doesn't matter at this point. What matters is that you break the boundary of being afraid to charge and start charging something, because here's the problem is, if you never charge, then you're never going to be good enough. People attribute value to the cost. It's just the way we operate, right? So if something's very expensive, we assume it's better. That's what we do this with gear. You line up a $100 condenser microphone, and then right next to it you put a $1,000 condenser microphone, and you tell somebody, which microphone do you think sounds better, and they see the price tag, they're going to always, and you do this in your head or your heart, is you're going to pick the $1,000 microphone, because you just know at your core it has to be better because it costs more. Otherwise, why would they charge more? And I hate to say it, that's not really the case. Maybe sometimes they sound better, and some of my favorite microphones are very expensive, but do I use them? No, because I really don't want to have a $5,000 microphone laying around. I don't really feel comfortable with that. Even though I'm at a point in my career where I could use $5,000 microphones, I would rather use a $200 microphone that to me sounds just as good in the mix. And if I dropped it, I wouldn't really feel that bad. So there's a whole brand snobbery thing, and related to that is the value we attribute to the cost of things. Expensive meals we assume taste better. Expensive cars we assume are better. Expensive whatever we assume are better. And in some cases there are better things about them, more quality, that kind of thing. Generally with someone that's recording or mixing, if they've done this for a long, long time and they have a really nice studio, they should be able to charge more, and they probably are better because they have experience that you don't have, and maybe they have some equipment that helps them do some things that you can't do, or they can work faster. I'm not saying that guys that charge a lot aren't worth it. Believe me, I want to be able to charge more and more over the years myself. But what I'm saying is that the psychology is there. If you don't charge anything, people think you're not good. If you charge pennies, people think you must be horrible. Why else would you be charging a little? It's just the way it is. And in stage 2, if you're stage 1, you got to do it for free. Stage 2 is to at least charge something, because then that says to the world and to you that I am worth something. I'm not doing this for free anymore. This cost me my time, and I know what I'm doing. Now, I don't have the experience maybe to back up a higher rate, but I'm starting to build something. And that is a psychological boost that you need. So if you're not charging right now and you've been doing this for a while and you feel like just you're sick and tired of doing all this work for people for free, just make a line in the sand and say, no longer. You tell your free clients, hey guys, I've been doing great work with you for a while and I hope you can understand, but I'm starting to do this as a business, even on the side, and I need to start charging something. Here's my introductory rate. It's very low, but I would love to keep working with you if you think you enjoy my work. You know what it sounds like. You can see my samples. Let's do this. And some people are going to say, no thanks, because they're freeloaders. And some people are going to say, okay, of course, I expect to pay something to get my music recorded or mixed, so you're a better deal than the studio, and I know you, and I just can hear your work, so I'll go with you. And that's how you start. Then just do a lot of work at that rate. Okay. The third stage of people, and this might happen very quickly for you if you catch wind of how good it feels to get paid to do work that you love, is you need to start charging more. Okay, so a lot of people start charging and they're doing work and they're actually getting paid to do it, and that is such a great feeling and a lift because you realize I have gotten paid to record and mix, therefore I can do it again, and that you catch that bug. But then the problem is the fear creeps back in. The same fear that would keep you doing stuff for free, it just creeps back in because again, we're just so afraid of what people think. The fear is I can never raise my rates. If I raise my rates, people won't hire me. And if people won't hire me, then I'm back to making no money. So I guess it's better to make a little bit of money than no money. And that would be a mistake. That's the worst mistake in business because that keeps you trapped in never charging enough and always being in a fearful posture. And you should never make decisions based off of fear or fear of loss. You should make decisions based off of potential gain, and you've weighed the risks, and there's always risk involved doing something. The risk of not charging is that you will never get paid enough. You'll never make a living doing this. You have to go do something you don't want to do. That's a pretty big risk in my mind. I'd rather take the risk that some people won't hire me and then be able to do the work I want to do and start that upward trend where I could really start charging enough to make a living. Okay, so for me, it was the same thing. It was I was charging nothing, a few bucks to record and mix, and I realized, hey, I've done a few paid gigs, and now I have even better samples and a portfolio that's growing. So it's been a year, let's say, new year, new rates, and I just up them. A lot of times I base it off of, I've got more experience now. I've got another year of doing some projects. I have probably taken a little bit of money I made last year and reinvested it in my business in more microphones. So now maybe I can record multi-track drums. More preamps or a new interface that lets me record a full band at once. A few more plugins that really help me do some mastering maybe, or a couple of like I didn't have an auto-tune or a Melodyne, and now I can do some vocal tuning. So you've taken some of that money and reinvested it so that now you can offer more to your clients. Well, then you're worth more because the cost of business has got to be factored into your rate. So whatever you're charging now is probably not enough, and you need to up it, especially if you're actually doing work. You're never going to feel like you deserve it. You're never going to feel like you're good enough because you always see your flaws and you always see those guys that are doing much better work than you. But the truth is that you still have to move up if you want to do this. So you have to fight the fear, raise your rates, because only two things are going to happen potentially. If you raise your rate, you're either going to have a lot of people that were working with you say, no, thank you, dude, I'm not going to pay that much for you. Well, then you know what? You don't want to work with those people anyway because they don't value your skill. Even if they've already worked with you, they already know how good you are. They should be very happy to pay you a little bit more because they should realize they got you early on when you were really affordable, and they should have been grateful for that. And now, they're going to pay what it costs for you who's more experienced. So if they're saying, I'm not going to pay you because your rates went up, you don't want to work with them anyway. Someone else wants to work with you. So either you're going to lose some bad business and that's better for you in the long run. And or you're going to get more clients and better clients because of the previous thing, which is people assume you're really good if you charge a lot. So your rates go up, all of a sudden you're in a different price range for people. They're seeing you as, oh, this guy's probably pretty good because his rate's not the bare minimum guy that down the street in his bedroom, even though you may be in your bedroom also. Your rate tells people a lot, and they assume a lot, and they can listen to your samples. So if they see your rate and it seems, well, it's not the cheapest guy, but he must know what he's doing because of the rate, and I listened to his portfolio and I like it, it sounds good, people are going to hire you. And these people are going to be people that are a little more serious about their music. So they are investing. They see it as an investment. They're not going to pay you a little bit and then complain because they don't like it or that it's too expensive. They're going to see this as an investment in their craft or their music. So they're saying, here's my baby, my song. I'm willing to pay you. And they feel like they're in it. They partnered with you because there's some money on the table. And for whatever reason, they're probably going to like your mix better because they paid good money for it. They got a good mix. They're going to like it better than if they paid nothing and got a good mix. They'll be like, it was free. So it's weird. It's psychological. So a lot of you just need to start charging more. The absolute worst that could happen is that nobody hires you because for whatever reason, no one likes your rate that you know of. And then you just wait a little bit until the word gets out. Or lower your rate again, and then you can get the work you want. I mean, there's really nothing to lose. So you need to progress from doing it for free to doing it for something the first time you charge, which it doesn't matter the price, that's a huge step for a lot of you, to then charging more as you gain more experience every year. Maybe make it a goal to up your rate every year as you do new projects and reinvest in your business. Now, if you're not actually doing work and you're sitting around and just fiddling and hanging out on my site or web forums, just buying gear, so you've been around for a while, and it's been a couple years, you don't raise your rate just because it's been around for a while. You raise your rate if you've done work in the past year at that rate and you have new stuff on your portfolio site. So there's a progression. I recommend you charge by the project or by the song flat rate. That forces you to work faster so you get more per hour in your own mind. I don't recommend charging by the hour because, again, it puts the risk on the artist. They don't know if you're going to take a long time. They don't know how much it's going to cost them in the end. So take the risk on yourself, put the onus on yourself, use some of the posts and tips I've been sharing lately, like the Tim Ferriss approach to mixing, on how to speed up how you mix, the 3-hour mix, all those different posts on the Recording Revolution to help you not waste time while you're mixing so you actually get more value for your money. But then just start charging more. Start charging more. Take yourself seriously, treat yourself like a business, whatever you think you're worth. Whatever you think you're worth is what you're worth. If you don't think you're worth much, you shouldn't charge much, and you probably aren't that good. It's really more of an emotional, mental thing. But if you feel like, I think I'm good, and I know I'm not great, but I feel like I'm worth more than what I was making last year, up your rate, treat yourself like a professional, and watch better clients come in. And then it's just a steady process of analyzing and seeing it go up and just working with clients you want to work with, not working with clients you don't want to work with, figuring out what kind of music you really like, figuring out what your strengths and weaknesses are, reinvesting in your business, even if it's one plugin here or another microphone to your collection here, or an upgrade to your DAW because it lets you do things that you haven't had in a few years, or you need a faster computer in 3 or 4 years. Reinvest so that your business grows and you can handle bigger, better clients and do the kind of work you want to do. I know that was a long rant. I hope that even within those vague steps that maybe you found where you are on that arc. Are you the person that needs to just start doing more work for free and build a portfolio site because you don't have that yet? Are you the person that's been doing it for free and needs to start charging today? Doesn't matter what it is, but move into a position where you're actually charging money for your work and treating yourself and your time as valuable? And are you the person that has been charging, but you're charging way too little and you're so afraid of raising your rates because you're afraid of what people will think and you don't feel like you're worth it and you need to just throw that fear out the window because it's useless and it's made up and it's in your mind and you need to start charging more and seeing what happens. Find out which of those 3 you are and what step you need to jump to next, and then wrestle through maybe what the specifics of that look like. It's going to vary for every person, every market, every country. So hope that gives you some ideas.
This next video will help get you through part G, and that's how you're going to promote your studio. In years past, before the internet, you had to actually spend some real money on conventional advertising, radio, TV, newspaper, magazine ads, billboards, whatever. But today, that's not the case. Networking is still the key. And this video talks about how you can spend some energy as opposed to money and perhaps build your business that way.
Hey everybody, welcome to Vision Mix Studios, our YouTube channel, and visionrecordingstudios.com. Today I want to do a video about a topic that I get asked about a lot, and I got a bunch of questions and a bunch of recommendations for this video over the last week or so on our YouTube channel, and I thought I would address it. And the basic concept or the question was, I'm running my little home or project studio, kind of doing it part-time, want to get more clients, or I've been recording my own music and I want to get clients. I want to start recording other people and start making some money. How do I do that? How do I go about it? And that's a pretty broad topic, and it's a pretty difficult thing to answer in just one sentence. So what I thought I would do is just tell you how I got started and the things that I did when I first started out as a part-time business, on the side as a hobby, kind of making some extra money, to the point where I became a full-time studio. And again, all done out of the comfort of my own home studio. And I'll be doing a studio tour video soon. There's already one up on YouTube. It's a little older. Some things have changed. I've gotten some new gear and stuff, but you could see the basic layout. If you go search my YouTube channel, you'll see my basic studio. It's just a home studio, nothing fancy, not a multi-million-dollar studio with racks and racks of equipment. It's a home studio that I'm able to work full-time and have been for several years. And this is how I got started. So I started as a part-time hobbyist, just like many of you probably watching this. I'm a musician, a guitar player, was in bands, original bands, cover bands over the years. And back in the mid-90s, I always had a fascination with recording and wanted to record my own band's music. That's how I got started, learning how to record back on the old Tascam, and I think it was the Foztech 4-track cassette players. That's what I started on. So I am dating myself a little bit for some of the younger people that are watching this, but that's how I started. And over the years, I've had my little studios, and as I was able to afford to make my studio a little bit nicer, a little bit bigger, and I got better at the craft of learning on my own music, I decided this is what I wanted to try to do full time, and I wanted to, just start recording other people, make some extra money, and then hopefully eventually moving into a full-time business, which I have. So the very first thing I tried to do when I was trying to get new clients is, first, let's say you're doing some recording, you're getting pretty good at it. You may not be, a world-class engineer yet, but you certainly can do something that's above some hack job. You're somewhere in the middle, right? You've been working on your own music. You got some stuff together. You think you can start recording other people and turn out some decent quality work. So how do I go about getting clients? Well, the first thing you got to ask yourself is, what kind of studio are you? Are you going to be a studio that's actually going to track bands in your home studio? Or are you someone who's going to just do some mixing and mastering work, where you're going to deal with people on the internet and have them send you, audio files and mix and master their project? You got to kind of decide what you want to do. Reason why I say that is, if you're going to be just a mixing engineer, the tools and the stuff you'll need to have is a lot different than if you're actually going to track artists live in your studio. So if you're going to track bands and artists live, obviously you have to have the space to be able to do that. You have to have, the necessary equipment, microphones, cables, stands, all the accessories that go around when running a recording studio. You have to have all that stuff before you can actually, start recording people. Unless you're just going to do like singer-songwriter stuff, then you may just need a vocal mic and kind of a, an instrument mic, and that's really about it. But anyway, I'm assuming that you've kind of decided what kind of studio you want to be, and that you have all the necessary, equipment, gear, and space to be able to do so. So the very next thing I would say to you is, the next thing I did was, you got to build yourself some kind of a website. And I recommend, if you're going to kind of run a business, even if it's part-time to make money, you should have something outside of just Facebook. Facebook is great. You should have a Facebook page for your studio. I do at Vision Recording Studios, or facebook.com/Vision Recording Studios. We have a Facebook page, but we also have a website, visionrecordingstudios.com. You should have a website. Even if it's a free WordPress template, you don't need to spend a lot of money on a website, but you should have a website. On that website, you ought to have kind of a bio of who you are, what your experience level is. You need to have a page for what kind of services you're going to offer and how much you're going to charge, and we'll talk about charging in a little bit. and how much you should charge. You also want to have a portfolio page of audio samples so people can listen to the work that you've done recently, so they know what kind of quality they're going to be able to expect when they come to you to record, or when they send you their audio files, so you can just mix their work. So you want to build yourself a website, and obviously contact information, so on and so forth. Simple 3-4 page website that just gives people the basics. So when you're going out, like we're going to talk about in a second, how do I go get those clients? And you start doing your networking, they have a website to go to. I don't recommend you just have a Facebook page. It doesn't present itself as a professional. And Facebook is limited. They're always changing the rules and the way and what you can and can't post. And it's not the most, user-friendly website to navigate. Your own website would be much better. And then also have a Facebook page, and also have a YouTube channel if you can, to give yourself more social media access, but definitely want to have a website. So now once you've decided what kind of studio you're going to have, and what, you're going to have your website, even if it's bare bones, you're going to have something with a .com that someone can land on. The next thing I would tell you to do, and what I did when I was first starting out, is there wasn't a Friday or Saturday night that I was not in the clubs in my local area watching bands live. If I wasn't working with a client, and I still do this to this day, I'm out in the clubs at least twice a month, going around, talking to different bands, passing out my business cards, shaking hands and kissing babies, as a politician would say, getting out with the people. Get out into the local music community. Let people know who you are and what you're doing. Hey, I'm just starting up a studio. I've got some work on my website at this, level, this many years of experience. Come check out what I can do if you guys are interested in recording. I would do that hundreds of times a month with people, shaking hundreds of hands to get out my business card into many hands as possible. Okay, so you want to go to live shows. You want to insert yourself into your music community. Bands play together. They talk around the community. Musicians talk to each other, right? If you're a musician watching this, if you've played gigs, you meet up with other bands, you talk with other bands. I'm sure you've been asked or have told people where you've recorded your stuff in the past, and that's how you get your word around. So go to live shows as much as you possibly can to get your name out there. It will pay off, I promise you. The other thing you can do, and I still do this to this day, Craigslist. Great free way to post ads about your studio and your local website. If you're going to do some mixing work for people outside of your local area, if that's what you decide to do, you can now post ads all over the country, right? Through Craigslist. I can't tell you how many hits on my website I get from Craigslist and how many jobs that's turned me on to. And it's free. It takes a little bit of work. I know you can't just post the same ad across all 50 states all at the same time. Craigslist has got all kinds of rules around that, or at least they did. But you can strategically place ads in different parts of the country, depending on how far you want to reach. But definitely in your local area, you want those ads being refreshed every 3 or 4 days. Every time a musician goes to Craigslist in your local area, they want to see your studio. Very, very powerful, and it doesn't cost a dime. So you want to do that. So now you're out at live shows, you're posting on Craigslist, you're on the internet, you're on Facebook, you're on Twitter, you're on YouTube, you're inserting yourself in your local music community. Okay? Now you got people calling you. So now what do? And this is something that a lot of people might disagree with me on what I'm about to say to you. The way I've always run my studio, even from the time before I had my very first client, I made a decision that I wasn't just going to record any old band that wanted to come into my studio. I didn't care if I wasn't working at the time, because probably like many of you, I had a full-time job, and my studio income wasn't really a necessity. It was something I aspired to get to, but it didn't have to make money. So I was always, from the very beginning, very selective about the people that came and recorded with me. I just wouldn't record any old person. If the artist or the band wasn't any good, or if I saw them live, or if I saw them, or listened to their stuff that they had online and they were a crappy band, I wouldn't take on the project. And I'll tell you how you can kind of weed those kinds of bands out in a second. So I was very selective. If the artist was really good and the artist or the band was really tight, then I would want to work with them, because my philosophy was, look, every CD that leaves my studio's got my name on it. And if a crappy band hands out a CD that sounds like crap because the band sucks, it's going to, the band's not going to say, well, we sucked that day in the studio. They're going to say, oh, the studio wasn't cool. The vibe wasn't right. They didn't get my sound right. Usually that means the band isn't really pro and they don't have their act together 9 out of 10 times. So I would highly suggest that you be very careful about the people that you bring into your studio. You only want to work with good quality musicians, because 75% of a great recording is musicianship. If the musicianship is good, the band is tight, the artist is good, your job becomes a lot easier, and you're going to make it, at the very least, a good quality product. Even if your mixing and your engineering chops aren't completely up to snuff yet, and you're still growing and learning, as we all are. I'm still learning and growing and trying to get better. But if you have a great artist, it makes it that much easier. And no one's going to listen to your stuff and go, wow, that really sounds like garbage. If you can take a decent artist and you can just get the levels kind of right and just kind of get the balance of the instruments, even if you're not a great mixer, that's going to sound like a really good demo at the very least. And at least it's going to start to develop your reputation that you can turn out good quality work. And a lot of that has to do with the musicianship. So be selective. Okay. And you talk about, well, how do you weed those people out? How do you know? I mean, you go out to the live shows, you give out your business card to hundreds of people, band calls you up. How do you know if they're any good if you don't remember seeing them play live? Well, I'm going to tell you how. So what I do with every artist, I do this to this day. Artist calls me up. If I've never seen them before, and I get this every week, I talk to them on the phone, talk through how much do you charge? We could talk about that in a minute. We kind of give them a ballpark figure. What kind of project do you want to do? I kind of give them kind of an idea of what the rough cost is. Before I let anyone step foot into my studio, I always, always, always have what I call a pre-production meeting with the band. I go up to their rehearsal space. I don't charge the band anything for this. It's on my own dime. It's my own gas money. It's out of my pocket. I tell the band, look, I'll come to you. I want to see you rehearse. I want to watch them play, even if it's 3 songs. I want to talk to the band. I want to get to know the band a little bit. I want to get to know who's representing the band. I want to know what I'm getting into before they step foot in my studio. Believe me, you will weed out a ton of people that way, and you could decide for yourself, hey, this is a band I want to get, want to get it on with. This is a band I don't want to get it on with. I can, and then this way, you get to meet them, they get to meet you. You get to understand their expectations and understand their project in detail. You could figure out for yourself, okay, can I meet these guys' expectations? Can I do the work? Can I deliver on what they need? And then you could decide whether or not you want to take on the project. That will help you weed out and only bring in people into your studio that you feel is something that you can really do good work, and that the artist is really good and you're really into what they do. Not to mention, at least in my area, no studio goes out to a band's rehearsal space and meets them. They thought that was the greatest perk in the world. Wow, you'll come out to see me. You're not going to charge me for it. You're going to come to me for a meeting. Makes them feel like rock stars. It gives you an inside look to what they're all about. They feel great about you because you're willing to take your time, your gas money to go spend a couple hours with them. Even if you don't take the gig, or even if they decide to go to another studio, it shows you're a class act. And what all that kind of does is it develops your reputation, especially if you're new at this and you're trying to get a good reputation in your local music scene. All these little things help. So I do that with every single band and every single artist. So if that pre-production meeting goes well and they want to move forward and you want to move forward, once you've given them kind of a quote on what it's going to cost to do their project, then the next meeting is the artist comes to my studio, not to record. I want them to come in and see the place. Come on in, hang out, check out the vibe, check out the gear. Let's talk a little bit more from our last meeting. Maybe now they have some additional questions they forgot to ask you when you went to see them. Now they come to see you. Okay, they get a chance to check out the space. They get a chance to see what the studio's all about. They get to see you in your environment now. Okay, so now you've had 2 meetings with them. So if they decide to move forward, the first time they're walking into your studio to record is not the day of recording. You don't want the day that they record the first time they've ever seen your studio, or the first time you've met them in person. That's a bad idea. I know a lot of studios do that. I know people have probably been really successful doing it that way. It's not the way I choose to work, and it's worked really well for me. It has gotten me out of more disasters than I can tell you, because I would talk to someone on the phone and think, oh, wow, this sounds like a really good project, blah, blah, blah. And then I go up and watch them play, and oh my God, they're train wrecks. And I'm like, I want no part of this, because what should only take 2 days in the studio is going to take 10, because these guys don't have their act together. You'll start to get a feel for what you want to work with, who you want to work with, what kind of projects you want to be involved with. So that's all part of being selective. Try the pre-production meeting. They'll think it's great. It takes a little more time to get them booked and on the calendar. You got to put a little more effort in, but in the long run, you're going to develop a much better reputation, and you're only going to work with the type of clients that you want to work with. So that's really, really important. Okay. So one thing that people would say to me was, well, gee, if I'm just starting out and I'm turning away work and I'm not just taking in anything, how in the heck do I ever get better at this if I don't have any acts or bands or music to work on? Well, there's a couple of ways you can do it. You want to practice your mixing chops, right? You want to be good at mixing and mastering if you're going to be a mastering engineer as well. But if you want to be mixing, you want to get good at it, right? If you don't have bands coming into your studio and you don't have music to practice on, how the hell do you get better, right? It's an obvious question. I'm telling you, turn away people that aren't any good. And you're like, I just want to record somebody so I have something to practice with. Here's another way you can do it. Go to a couple of websites. First website I'm going to give you is duelingmixes.com. Website will pop up on the screen. Second website is mixcoach.com. What these two websites are, if you've never heard of them, they're membership sites, monthly membership sites, very, very affordable, less than $25 a month, where for $25 a month, you can join one or both of these websites. And what you get is you join a community of other mix engineers, where every month you get a full multi-track song, usually recorded in a real high-end studio, real good quality recorded tracks for you to practice your mixing on. Okay, that's wonderful. You get different styles of music. You get really good, well-recorded tracks, so you can really focus on mixing and mastering, but mixing chops, which getting your production and getting your mixes sounding professional. The other great thing about this is you get to post then your mixes on their user forums or send them to the people that run these websites, and they give you feedback on your mixes. So you get to hear feedback from people who do this for a living and your other fellow mix engineers that are at all different levels of their career. Some just starting out, some that are seasoned professionals. So now you get some feedback on the work that you're producing. This is a great way for you to practice your mixing chops before you start working on people's, your clients' projects. So if you have some downtime, if you're struggling getting those first projects, or if you're not just taking any old person that wants to give you $50 to record, this is a great way to practice your mixing techniques, is by these two websites. Again, Mixcoach member and duelingmixes.com. Wonderful websites. I have been affiliated with both of them in the past. Not that I get any, affiliated is the wrong word. I've been members of theirs. Even to this day, I'm still a member of Mixcoach, and I love that website. It's wonderful to be able to send some of my mixes in to guys that some of these, known Nashville's producers and mix engineers that mix, some of the biggest stars on the planet, and they're actually critiquing my work, which is wonderful. You get great feedback from people that are in the business. It really helps you get better. They're two wonderful resources. So that's one way to practice. At least you're mixing. As far as your recording and your capturing techniques, the way I did it when I first started is if I didn't have a band in here and I wanted to learn how to record an acoustic drum kit, I'm not a drummer per se, I'm a guitar player. I went out and bought myself a $800 Gretsch, kind of a, entry-level drum kit. Replaced all the heads on there and put some nice quality heads on the drums, and I'd bring it in, and I could play enough to, hit kick snare with a simple little fill and some cymbal crashes, right? And I would, mic up my own drum kit, and I'd go in there, I'd record some stuff, come back and listen, move a microphone, work on mic placement techniques, learned how to record a kit before I had a client in here. Invite a drummer friend over that really knew how to play. Once I kind of got my act together, let them play for a while, recorded them. Worked on the stuff on my own. I call it investing in your craft. Make the investment in stuff like Mixcoach member or Dueling Mixes. Invest in the craft by doing some recording on your own. You probably already do this if you're a musician. If you're a guitar player, you'll probably write and record your own music all the time. Work on your own tracks. Just don't take any old crappy band in your studio just so you have something to work with. That's my recommendation. Again, some of you guys may disagree with that. Some people may listen to this and go, you're out of your mind. You should take everything and record everything you possibly can. I didn't take that approach, and it's worked well for me, but it's just, that's what this is. What did I do? How did I do it? This is what worked for me. Okay, so you're working on your craft, you're getting better at what you're doing, you're being selective on who you want to work with, you're out in the scene, you're networking, you got a decent website, maybe you got a couple of sound samples that you've recorded, you got, your work's getting better and better. Okay, so now we talk about the studio. So You got people calling you, you've gone out, you've met some people, now you got a couple of recording sessions scheduled, people are going to start coming into your studio. You want to kind of work on the studio itself. And I know depending on your space and your personal situation, everybody's is going to be a little different. But my whole thing was, especially if you're a home studio, I'd say you want the space to be kind of inviting. You want it to be kind of a cool, kind of a, trippy kind of a vibe, nice dim lighting. If you can see behind me up on the ceiling, I don't know if the webcam picks this up. I have, Christmas lights on the ceiling, cool colors, nice warm tones. Everything is neat and clean and kind of looks good. It's not just some, slapped together thing in an unfinished basement where there's no sheetrock on the walls and there's insulation hanging out of the rafters. If someone's going to come in and pay you money, you want that space to be inviting. You want people to come into your studio and go, wow, this is a really cool kind of a hip place. I feel comfortable recording here. It's all about the energy, the mood, the vibe. If you're a musician, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you have kind of a cool, comfortable space that you feel really good about emotionally, you're going to have a much better performance than if you're in, some unfinished basement where the vocalist is recording next to the hot water heater and the thing's going off in the microphone, or, the place smells all musty. And, you want to have a nice kind of an environment. And again, everyone's situation is different. You're going to be limited to what you can do, but you want to try to make the thing as comfortable and as cool as you possibly can. So how do you do that? Well, go on YouTube, look at other people's studios, go, do your research. Online, you can find a lot of different cool ideas. I'm going to do another studio video tour here not too long from now. You can maybe steal some of the ideas I've come up with. I don't know. I stole them from other people, so you could steal them from me. But you want the space to be inviting. So when they come here, they have a great experience. Not only can you give them a great product at a good price, but they have a great experience as well. So and let's talk about charging for a minute. Well, how much do you charge when you're first starting out? And that's kind of it's a difficult question to answer. My philosophy has always been, even when I first started out, I kind of build myself and I was kind of fake it till you make it kind of a thing. I'm not going to be the cheapest guy on the block, but I'm not going to be the most expensive guy on the block either. Do your research in your local area, find out what other studios are charging. It really depends on, it's a supply and demand thing, right? What are other studios in your area charging? You don't want to be the lowest guy. You don't want to undercut everyone way too much because you don't want to have that reputation as you're the cheap studio. I never wanted that reputation. I don't even put anywhere on my website that I do demos. I hate the word demos. Demo to me sounds cheap. I tell clients I do professional sounding records. If you're going to use them as a demo, that's fine. But demo to me always made it sound like it's not as good as the professional stuff. And that's just me. I'm a little wacky like that, but it's worked for me. If someone calls up and says, I want a 3-song demo because I'm just looking to get some gigs in my local area band. So I said, well, I could give you a 3-song CD, but it's not going to be a cheap demo. You're going to pay X amount of dollars. It's going to sound like a professional record. It's not going to sound like a cheap demo. And bands and artists really like that. So I would say, again, how much do you charge? Do you charge by the hour? Do you charge by the project? Boy, that's another tough question. I don't charge by the hour. I charge by the project. I kind of figure out what I feel I'm worth as an hourly rate. I kind of been doing this long enough to know, depending on the project, and because I meet with the bands in person beforehand, what the project really entails and about how long it's going to take. And I kind of figure out how much, I need to get an hour, and you kind of come up with a project price. That's how I do it. Some people just charge a flat rate. You could do it however you want, but my point is, I wouldn't be the cheapest guy on the block just to get a lot of work. I don't think in the long run, if you want to do this full time, that's not the right way to go about this. You got to look past today. You have to look at what does you want your business to be down the road and what kind of reputation do you want to have. And you have to kind of gauge your skill set against the supply and demand in your local area and kind of come up with a price. And the bottom line is, the more you're in demand, the better your work gets, the more you can charge, right? I mean, that's pretty simple stuff. So I know that's not a direct answer, but it's kind of a thing to think about when you try to decide on how much you want to charge people. Charge people what you feel you're worth. don't give everybody the deal of the century. What you're going to find is a lot of local artists, especially the weekend hobbyists, that don't have a lot of money. They're all looking for the deal of the century. They all want something for nothing. And I've always billed myself as you get what you pay for. I don't do bottom rock prices just to get money in the door. I believe in quality over quantity. The quality artists, the ones that take their craft seriously, even if it's just a hobby for them, will invest the money to get something of high quality. I would rather, again, be looked at. If you're looking at cars, for example, maybe not the Ferrari of the recording studios, but I am not the Yugo either, right? I'm somewhere in the mid-size family car, someone who has a few bucks to spend, but doesn't have to be rich to come spend it here. And I'm going to give them the best bang for their buck. That's how I kind of think of it. So as far as charging, that's how I would kind of go about it. Once you got some people in the door and you've done some work, the next thing I would tell people is get testimonials. If you have clients that are happy with your work, and they should be, if you've done your job, I ask every single client for a testimonial. Please, can I have a little testimonial put on your website? I've had artists that say, you can even videotape me, put that on my website. And I've done that, and it's worked wonders. It's like a review on Amazon.com, right? You buy a product, you like to read reviews. Well, people want to read about testimonials. They want to hear about other clients' experiences. Get testimonials. The more testimonials you get, the better. And I've gotten to the point where I don't even ask some people for them. They just send them to me in an email. I just cut and paste them, put them on my website. I've had people actually get in front of a video camera and do it for me. Didn't have to pay for it. They were more than happy because I worked with them and had such a good experience at my studio that they were willing to do that. That will go a million miles for you in getting future clients. So try to get as many testimonials as you possibly can. And then the last thing I would say is, give your past clients kind of a commission or a finder's fee for future clients. So if I have an artist that came in, really enjoyed what I did for them, got a great CD out of it or demo or whatever they get, and they go out and they do their thing and they tell other artists about me. If another artist comes to me and says, hey, so-and-so recommended me, I give that other client, free studio time the next time they want to come in and record. Maybe not completely for free, but maybe I knock $100 off the session or 25% or whatever you feel is fair. But give your past clients a reason to tell other clients about you or other musicians about you. Give them some perks for being repeat customers. Give them some perks for getting other people to come to your studio. It makes a world of difference. And all those things that I just mentioned all add up to the point where I went from doing this part-time, maybe a couple of times a month as a hobby, making a couple of bucks on the side, to eventually becoming a full-time studio where now I'm busy. I'm booked 3 to 4, 5 weeks in advance pretty much all year. The only time I'm not really booked that far in advance is usually between Christmas and New Year's when no one has any money left. And that's kind of when I'm working on my own music, but I'm booked pretty much all year round. And it's because I treated my studio like a professional business from day one, even though it was a home studio. I treated it like I was in business for 10 years before I ever had the first client. I went out and I built myself in a way, especially in the beginning, I kind of built myself up to be a little bit better and a little bit more than I really was. I call it fake it till you make it. Once you get to that point, you don't need to worry about that as much. I didn't lie to people, but I always it's kind of like dressing for the job you want, not the job that you have. I'm sure you've heard that analogy before. So by doing all those things, I was able to attract people to come to me, to give me a chance. And it's really worked out well, and I'm very fortunate. Oh, and the last thing, I forgot to mention this, which is pretty obvious. When I first started, too, one of the things I was doing as I was seeking out really good talent in my local area is if I found an artist that was really, really good, someone who probably had a couple of CDs on their own already put out, they had another studio that they like working with, so on and so forth, I would offer them free studio time. If I found an artist that I really liked their music and thought they were really good and it would be really good to have their sound samples on my website, I would offer them a free session, a free 4-hour session in my studio. Maybe they have a new song they just wrote that they didn't have a chance to record yet. It's a great way to get someone to come into my studio that maybe was working in another studio to see maybe if I can kind of steal that future business. I can't tell you how many times those free 4-hour sessions turned into a full album 6 months later. A dozen times that's happened to me. I gave away 4 or 5 hours, met a new client. Next thing you know, 6 months later, they're calling me back, asking me for a price for a full-length CD, right? And inevitably, without even knowing what their other studio would charge them, my price would always end up being a better deal because I'm a home studio and I don't have the big overhead. So I didn't have to charge like a big commercial studio can charge. And they felt really great about the fact I would give them something for free. So when you're first starting out, do some free work. But again, be selective. Don't just record anybody. Go out and get good talent and offer them some free recording. And the only catch is you just say to them, hey, look, can I use this recording session as part of my portfolio? I've never had an artist say no. Most of them are honored that you'd put their stuff on their website. But again, you only want to put great stuff on your website. You don't want to put a crappy band on your website. Even if the sonic quality of the recording is great, but the band is kind of all over the place, don't put that up as your best work, okay? You want bands that are really, really good, artists that are really good, regardless of the style of music, okay? So that's what I would recommend for someone who's just getting started. I know I'm ranting, I'm all over the place, but this is kind of how I started, and it's worked well for me.
Part H is like the crystal ball. We used to do this at the studio all the time. We would try to predict what the business is going to be like in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, and then figure out what we're going to need to do to be ready for it. And it's not necessarily just equipment, but it might be a bigger house, a bigger space. If you're recording bands and you have a limited space in your house, are you going to have to rent space someplace else? Or are you going to have to get a bigger house or a garage, build a bigger garage? Are you going to have to hire somebody? Sometimes to do more sessions, especially if you still have your day job, you may have to have another person, maybe an intern or another person that you pay, kind of your trainee. If business increases and if you still have your day job, you may actually need to hire another person, somebody who you feel comfortable working in your house, who can work with your clients and continue your business. So that might be an item for this part of the spreadsheet as well. And for price, maybe put a yearly salary or so much an hour. For example, you're going to pay this person X number of dollars per hour. You can't completely check out even if you have other people working for you. You have to be supervising and be around, but it can be a help. I know Fallon McElligott, which was a big agency in Minneapolis, they were winning a lot of Clios and doing a lot of really good work. And because of that, they had more clients. And they had a saying that we want to see how big we can get before we get bad. And so that can happen too as the business grows. Sometimes you get farther and farther away from the actual work. And it may not be fun. I always chose to do the work as opposed to being the administrator. But you may end up being an administrator if you start having employees. But again, that's just something to think about. And finally, part I. Will the studio be your main source of income, meaning this is what you do now? A secondary source of income, meaning that you have a day job and this is what you do nights and weekends? A way to support your professional interests? Perhaps you're playing a band and you want to record your songs. Or a hobby or recreation. Maybe this is something you do for fun. Maybe you don't have a band, but you just want to make some music. Or maybe you just want to record some narration for a video you're working on, or an animation that you're doing, or a podcast. But check all that apply. So when the spreadsheet is completely populated, go ahead and name it first name, last name, Project 9. Go back to the project page, click Submit Assignment, and then upload it. I'm going to end this episode with another Sonic Highways Dave Grohl clip. This is about a Chicago studio. And here they talk about the monthly nut. And the monthly nut is how much money you have to make each month to pay your lease payments, your rent, your employees, your insurance, utilities, healthcare, taxes, all those things. And I know at the studio at one time when we had 14 people total working there, the amount to break even, the monthly nut was about $85,000 a month. And we did it. But that's why it can be comforting to have a day job so you don't have to worry so much about booking sessions.
As a drummer, recording with Steve was a huge deal. That is one of my life's greatest gifts. I got to record with Steve Albini and listen back and hear his drum sound on my drums.
This is the control room. Inside here is where all the technical stuff goes on. This is a Neotech recording console made by the Neotech company, a Chicago company. We bought this building in December of 1995. Carpentry and construction was done by a crew that we assembled, a very small number of actual professional tradesmen. Like this room is a pretty good example. Some of the adobe was laid by professional masons, and you can see that the grout joints are very even and very regular. And then some of it was laid by my punk rock friends, possibly after a 3-martini lunch. And so
maybe that area there.
This room is really cool. This is the Kentucky room. Beneath this floor, there's another room exactly the same shape. We've separated the floor from the wall, which allows us to couple the air volume in those two rooms together. And that gives you much better linearity and low frequencies because you have a larger air volume. The larger the air volume,
He's brilliant.
The longer a wave you can propagate.
So he sort of
without
affords that reputation of being a cynical prick.
There's a whole nother studio on the other side of that wall, which you're not going to get to see. Because fuck you guys. My monthly nut on this place is about 30 grand, meaning come hell or high water, I have to make $1,000 every day. I've gone broke a couple of times. I sold my house and had to sell off a bunch of guitars. There was a very glorious period of about 6 months or 8 months where I didn't owe anybody a fucking penny. Now I'm up to my balls in debt again, but you know. Playing cards is a pastime of mine, but it is also a second income, and there have been times when I've been able to pay the salaries of the people that work here because I had a good week playing cards. Owning a studio is much more gambling than I do when I'm playing cards.
I love him. Steve Albinian, he's like one of the most important influences on me. I was a punk rock kid. I went to one studio in Brooklyn where someone told me that the way we wanted to record wouldn't work and that the way I was playing was wrong. I wrote Steve a letter from an address I got somewhere, and I said, hi, I'd like to build a recording studio and I don't know how to do it. Then just proceeded to send me letters and drawings and like facts, details of how to install the windows. When I wrote him a letter, he sent me designs on how to build a studio. I was a kid. Like, that's not a dick. That changed my life. It's actually since been a real guide to me of like genuine generosity to other people. And it was the first of many studios that I've built.
Okay, well, I'll see you guys next week.